Sorry, y'all. The joys when you get to see the behind the scenes. It's funny. I wonder why it wasn't working like that before. It's weird. My Zoom is not happy with me. Stand by, folks. So hey, Nelson, do you want to jump in on the audio thing here for a second? Help me out with the Zoom. So when I'm hitting my menu, it's stopped at the USB IF menu. I don't know how to get back further out. Yeah. No, it's just not. I need to get out to the main menu, and it's not allowing me to do that when I hit menu. It's stuck in the USB audio IF. Yep. Yeah, I got it.
Should I reconnect then? Oh, you want me to go up to frequency there? Say that again. Yeah, sorry. Since we're disconnected, you've got no audio. How's that? Can you hear me, Nelson? Thanks, y'all, for hanging on.
Here, appreciate input levels. Still a problem. So help me out here. I'm on audio USB audio IF. Okay. You want me to go into the menu? I press menu, effect, tuner, monitor, phantom, plug-in, disconnect. Great. I understand. But I don't know how to get out of the USB menu. Is my point. When I click disconnect, and it said, "Are you sure?"
Yep. Mm-mm. It just leaves me at the connect or disconnect and frequency in the audio IF menu. Maybe I just no, the connect is the option. Okay, audio IF. There we go. And yeah, back to record. There we go. Yep. it was on. Now do I still let me reconnect? Okay. I'm going to reconnect now, or how do you want to do it? Got it. Okay, and now what's my mechanism of reconnecting? There we go. How's that? Nope.
How about that? Chipmunk. Well, maybe we just bail on the Zoom thing and I'll just do it via crappy audio. What do you think? Okay. Let's see. Maybe go to the Z.
Yeah. How's that? Can you guys hear me? Is it normal now? All right. Sweet. 13 minutes of technical difficulties. All right. Did I sound like a chipmunk the whole time? Oh, so sorry for the thousands of you who are listening. And how about we reboot, since I don't want to sound like a chipmunk. So I'm going to welcome you back to week 5 of 6 in Chipmunk Land. No, sorry, that's a joke for those who are in here in the real recording originally. Week 5 of 6 here in the Creative Calling Book Club. And it's the week that is called Amplify. This is of the 4-step process. This is the 4th step in the IDEA framework. This is the A, which again stands for Amplify. Why I chose the word amplify when I was writing the book versus just calling it community is not just because it fit with the handy acronym, but there's this a very clear biological mechanism by which humans need to interact with other humans. We are hardwired for this stuff. And what we are doing is when we are participating in a community, participating something that's outside of us, it requires us to connect with others, to amplify, to use our voice, to use the tools that we have to get our message out of our heads and our hearts into the world. And it's, I believe, the most often misunderstood or understood aspect of the 4-step process. And I believe it is because it's in large part misunderstood or undervalued. I think is where a lot of people have a huge opportunity. My experience in coaching thousands of people across Creative Live and my podcast and whatnot, and just getting off stages and seeing folks, eyeball to eyeball, that's part of what makes this exciting to me, is because I believe it's an area that is ripe for you to take steps to improve. So hopefully you've done the reading. And just a quick recap for those of you who are watching the live broadcast, either on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter or in Instagram Live. The folks that are in the Zoom call are in that call because they have subscribed to my text relationship, which is super simple. It's actually me and my thumbs on the other end of that thing. Although I did figure out how to connect to a keyboard so I can type even a little bit faster. But what they did is they texted 206-309-5177. So if you haven't done that and you want to be in the Zoom call where I have a chance to call on you, that's great. We take the first 50 people who sign up. So last week was execute. I'm hoping to go to the phones here for a second and share, if you would, what you put into action last week. Any 1 or 2 things that you did to kick your butt into gear for a regular practice, for doing. So I want to know that, hey, this week I got up every morning at 6 o'clock and went for a walk, and then journaled. I want to know that you had a session plan where you went on a photo walk every day for 30 minutes at lunch, or you spent some time coding on a minimum viable product for the app that you're working on. I want to know just one or two things that you did, and I want to hear from a handful of people. Of course, we're going to go into the Zoom call. Who is willing to volunteer? Was that Nancy? Was that a this? Nancy. Nancy C is in the house. Okay, go for it.
I think I told you that I'm trying to shift my photography to focus on conservation, wildlife photography, and I've been part of a group of conservation photographers. But I joined a class. I committed to a class this week on specifically creating a pitch, creating your story. I mean, you have to be accountable. We meet every Tuesday and we have a discussion and we share our ideas and we refine them. And it was a financial commitment, which I had been unwilling to make earlier, but I decided if this is the direction I want to go, I need to learn. So
Great. I love it. And I understand the financial commitment. Things are, maybe tough right now. They're tough for a lot of people, and there's anxiety. Just a reminder to do everything you can to structure the rest of your life so that that financial commitment doesn't hurt so much. And it's often a thing that we creators or people who identify this get derided for. But the reality is that we're no worse with money. In fact, we've been coached by the world to think often that we are not good at money. And by we, like, who's this we? This idea that creativity should be, put on a back burner or is less valuable than so many other things. So A, I want to congratulate you for making a financial commitment. Nice move. Sometimes that's very hard. B, I want to remind you to do everything you can to minimize your expenses early on in your journey so that you can afford time and space to learn. And then C, I want to give you a massive high five for taking an action last week, because it's the doing. Now, as a follow-on, I just want to remind you that showing up at this class every Tuesday, I think you said it is where value is. That is the consistent behavior that you're looking for. Showing up not just for your classmates, but for yourself. So shout out to Nancy. And two others real quick. All right, we're going to go to Fergus. Go ahead, Fergus. Let us know what you did this week.
Something that can you hear me?
I can. You sound great. You don't sound like a chipmunk. That's me. I get the chipmunk role here.
Something that I'm trying to do, I know, Chase, you've mentioned this before, is you try to create before you consume. And for me, I know I've got the habit of wanting to instantly jump on, whether it's Instagram or Facebook first thing in the morning, those types of things. And I'm trying to hold myself back from a photography standpoint and have things that I want to post ready the night before. So when I get up in the morning, if I have that urge, I try to post something. Maybe it's on Instagram. Usually it's Instagram. Try to do that first before I start consuming the stuff that I'm seeing. So that's been a big challenge for me. It's a small one. It's a simple one, but trying to create before I consume is a fun challenge for me.
Well, kudos to you, because that is also a huge step. It's one of the things I love about Stoic philosophy. It's one of the things why I have a morning routine that doesn't involve that, specifically because it can do such a disservice to our plans. And if those of you who are unclear what Fergus is mentioning, creating before we consuming is a great way to not get sucked into the drama of everybody else's world of comparison, where we're looking at someone else's number of followers or likes or any of those things, because creativity is not Instagram and the internet is not your judge and jury. And this idea of creating before you consume is something I learned from my friend Marie Forleo. Just that little nugget. I've always advocated for it, but I didn't have the tight little phrase. And it's when we create first, even if it's a halting, imperfect, first simple act, we have done something. It's like a lot of you. I heard some other folks in previous things. One of your classmates said that she makes her bed first thing every morning. That's a little victory right there. It's very simple, but there's some psychological studies that have been happen. That's one of the reasons the military do it. It's a thing to accomplish, and then you revisit that at the end of the day. You show up and your bed is made. You might not appreciate it at that moment. You might be tired, but this is a sign of doing something. And every time you create before you consume, it's a little victory. And in each of those little victories, you learn to trust yourself. And that trust creates momentum. And we know what momentum creates, right? It creates results. So thanks for sharing, Fergus. I'm going to go for one other folk, and then we will move right in there. Jay Donovan, JD Smith. I'm going to unmute you, my man. There you go. Love to hear from you.
Hello. Thank you for taking me. Since your book club, it takes a long time for me to read books, but it's usually because of in the evening, I'll read a few pages and I'll fall asleep. But I now have allowed myself to read 1 hour every morning before I start my work.
Wow.
So it's your book. I've got Become an Idea Machine that I'm working on. And then also Lewis Howes' The School of Greatness. But it's now that I'm addicted to reading creative books and all that. So,
well, this isn't this space that you just created for yourself, an hour. Right now it's for reading. And you're consuming information, you're aligning. It sounds like while you are, that is an action, setting aside time to read and consume. That hour, the more you use that hour in service of your vision for yourself, whether it's reading or creating or working on your screenplay or signing up for the business license through the .gov website, whatever it is, you're starting a habit of doing a thing in the morning. And that slot, if you've reserved it and protected it, can be useful over time. It can be used for a lot of different things. So I want to applaud you for carving out that time and for becoming, as you said, an idea machine. I love that. That's a good one. I'm going to borrow that one. But also, just don't get too caught up in just the consuming of the material. Okay, I want to remember that you take action, so you're not in that ID loop, that imagining what you want and then designing a plan and going back and like, oh, I get a new idea from Lewis, and then I go back and do it again. So, rewarding you first for setting aside the time. That's incredible, and an hour is not insignificant. What would you all? I mean, an hour every day for your passion, for the thing that's your side hustle, for getting better, for improving yourself, an hour. And we think about that as a major commitment. Think of the other things. How many of you, show of hands here in the Zoom call, did a time audit? This was 2 weeks ago. Anybody disturbed by what they saw? It's virtually a 1-to-1. Oh, Lauren was not disturbed by what she saw when she audited. She must have rocked it. But most people, myself included, were extremely disturbed by the time audit that we perform on ourselves, because we realize how fleeting and whimsical we are with our time. So shout out to you, JD, for carving out an hour for yourself. What I've found is that 1 hour leads to 2 hours lead to 4. And if you ask Warren Buffett, he says, my calendar's not empty because I'm a billionaire. I'm a billionaire because I've kept my calendar empty for focusing on what he wants to do with his time and his life, not letting his schedule be everybody else's. All right. Let's see here. I want to do a read. Okay. I often read at the beginning of all of these, and I want to have no exclusions. So for this 6-week process, so in doing so, I'm going to pull up it's from page 224. Build a genuine audience that loves what you do, how you do it, and why. All this should happen before, during, and after you've created your new product, your new website, your pieces of art, your performance, whatever. Community building runs parallel to your creative work, and it requires the same degree of consistency. Feeling overwhelmed? Take a deep breath, because patience is everything. You need to be in this for the long haul, so pace yourself. Interlude here. Notice like what Jason JD went from nothing to an hour. He didn't go from nothing to 6 hours, nothing to an hour. And that's a major commitment. And then I said, over time, it becomes 1, becomes 2, becomes 4. This is pacing yourself. This is being in this for the long haul. If you're wondering where successful creators found thriving communities, you were wondering the wrong thing. They didn't find communities, they built them. In fact, if you consider them successful, they've probably been building their communities for 5 years or more by now. This is true even if you're only just hearing of them. All runaway success creators seem as though they came out of nowhere, but they've always represented years of careful effort on the part of the creator. Their community has known about them and their work much longer than the rest of us here in the mainstream have. The anticipation for their big launch has been building for ages. Their community was the lever that drove the mainstream success you're now witnessing. Creators create first and foremost. But if they want someone else to care, you've got to lay the groundwork for future success while you are creating. All right. I think rather that speaks for itself. So I don't think we need to recap or linger. I want to first then turn our attention to one of 3 topics that we're going to cover today. The first one is finding your people. The second one is the act of actually building your audience. And the third one is launch. One word about finding your people. Again, maybe I was talking like a chipmunk because my audio settings were not correct at that point, but I need to restate that we are creative animals and human connection is required. If we do not hold a baby shortly after it is born and actually touch it, hold on to it, the baby will not survive. This is not a nice to have. Human connection in all of its forms. This is not saying you need to be at the center of the party, but human connection is required. And if our biology needs to touch it in some way, imagine if we don't cultivate it, we certainly can't then be maximizing the biological, ecological, evolutionary lever that social connection has cultivated for us, right? So many things, we fall in love with singer-songwriters as they pour their heart out on stage, but it's not always clear how many people have come together in order to create that one song to be able to perform in front of you, the audience, whether it's on a live stream or in a previous world or a future world where we get to sit in the room and listen to that person perform. So where do we go from here? Our role is to do 2 things. One is to show up. And by showing up, I mean for yourself and for others. Now, showing up for others looks like this. I always say, be the fan you wish you had. Right now, and I know the chat in the Zoom and the comments online that I'm seeing coming in from all the different channels, you right now have an opportunity to create and connect with other people. I love sampling randomly, or people who are saying smart things or who are engaging. What do? You tend to go look at their handle. That's part of you showing up for somebody else, is to be the fan that you wish you had for them. And in turn, what that does is, especially if you show up over time, that makes me curious and interested in what it is that you're doing. Like, wow, Fergus is always here. He's always engaged. He's always asking questions. I wonder what Fergus does. So I'm going to start looking at Fergus's stuff. Now, this is true in digital communities and in physical communities. I've seen people sitting in the front row of, if I've had public appearances in New York or LA, and these people are traveling and I still see them in the front row. Absolutely, I will make time for them. Now, that is not necessarily the means to success, is getting someone that you've been learning from or inspired by to recognize your stuff. But you can understand if you experience that, if you do that practice with a lot of different people in your community, that is by definition how you build it, right? If you show up, you are participating in that community. That community is growing. You're N+1, right? Now, imagine the same being true for other people showing up for you, other people showing up at your stuff. My belief is that if you are not happy with the number of people that are liking your posts, the response that you are getting from your industry, of course, we can't only judge our process by what other people think. Otherwise, we would, what is it? Well, I was going to go down a different story. I'm not going to go down that. But we can't always judge our progress by how the market receives it. But we should foster this connection that we know we will need at some point. Maybe you're not there right now. Maybe if you go back to our learning modes from last week, maybe you're in the private part, the individual learning, where you're trying to explore and understand, and you don't want to, everybody to be seen. This is still a great time to be showing up for others, because at some point, you're going to want them to show up for you. And notice, I'm not aiming to make this a transactional. I show up, so therefore you must show up. No. This is because it's the right thing to do to support your fellow human, to be a creator. And there's so much value in you showing up to other people as well. Not only do you get to see and learn, but you get to feel what it feels like to be around others who are pursuing their dreams. That is a very powerful force. And again, finding your people, which is the title of this section, is such an integral piece of the web that is success and fulfillment. So if our role in community is twofold, the first is showing up and giving support, delivering value. I did notice that a handful of you did a review at Amazon for Creative Calling. Thank you. I see you delivering. That's value to me and to this community. It's value to me because you are showing up at my books page and typing in words, and downstream at some point I will benefit from that. But it's also valuable for the community because you're sharing what you've learned. You're adding value and expecting nothing in return. Maybe if you are oriented around the transaction, I would invite you to decouple your emotional relationship with the transaction and try and be in it for the greater good. Understand that you will benefit, but starting with not expecting anything in return is a very, very good practice. So the second role is to participate, to listen, to ask questions, to expand your perspective by listening to a number of viewpoints, by providing prompts, by, if you're stuck, you asking a question not only is showing up for yourself, but it's showing up for others, because if there are 4,200 people tuning in right now, certainly some subset of those people have the same question or a very similar one that you do. Now, go back to the singer-songwriter. So many people think if there's just one person on stage, or it's a poet, or it's a practice or a craft that is historically thought of as just a solitary pursuit. I can't caution you enough from that mindset. In the book, I use the concept of Metallica. You think it's just 4 people, but you realize they travel with literally hundreds of people to every single venue. And so it's a little more like a symphony than a 4-piece band, because all of those things working in concert with one another, pun intended, from the sound engineers to the recording booths to the executives to the stage builders, are required to put on the experience that you receive when you show up at a show. So there's a really cool graphic. I want to go back to the phones here, and I'm going to start off with some chats from around the world first. But I want to go, let's see here. I want to go to page 228. There's a graphic there. And that graphic is about the community overlap. Now, I've named a couple of different communities. I've named a craft community. For me, that was photography, and photography is my craft. So for example, if you were a writer, this would be the writing community. Craft community, focus community. For me, that was action sports, right? That was, I could have participated in action sports as an athlete, not as a photographer. That was an identity that I had owned for a long time. It's one of the reasons that I decided to photograph in that community, because this community was already connected to. And for you, I don't want to suppose what that is. But if you go to 228, which I'm going to go right now, this core community where those two things overlap, again, I'll use my own example, action sports photographer. There's action sports community, and that's if you're at REI or you jump out of airplanes or base jump or snowboard or skate or whatever. There's photography where those two things overlap. To me, that was my core community. So I would invite you to start thinking about what communities you can join. Earlier in the class, I hinted about becoming a joiner, and I said we'd talk about that in the amplify step. Becoming a joiner is a turnoff. It's a scary thing. It's weird for a lot of people. This is part of your assignment today, is to get over that fear, is to take some step and join a community. We heard already from, who was it? I think it was, maybe it was Nancy, talked about joining that group. Now, I don't care. I don't want to be prescriptive. Are you joining if you're a writer, joining a writing group? If you're a photographer, joining a photography group? If you're an entrepreneur group, or if you're an entrepreneur, joining a tech group or something? I don't care. I just want you to start to develop the habit of joining something. And you will know soon if this is providing value, but I want you to commit to enough of these sessions that you are able to overcome the stories that we are programmed to tell ourselves when something is uncomfortable right up front. It's sort of like working out doesn't start to feel good until the third or fourth week. Anybody identify with that? Like, imagine if you said, does working out feel good? And the next day you wake up, you feel terrible, you feel sore, you feel painful, you feel pain. And yet, if you showed up 4 workouts in a row, that's when you start to get the buzz. The same thing is true with community. So again, that is one of your assignments, is to become a joiner here. This is the heading on page 229, if the graphic's on page 228. Draw your own Venn diagram. What are 2 different communities that you're in, your craft and your focus, and therefore what might your core community be? And I don't care if it's small. Small is actually beneficial. You can have more impact on a community. You can connect with the people who started the community more easily. You get maybe more personalized one-on-one connection, coaching, ideation. And then the benefit of a very large one is the breadth. So again, there's really no downside in identifying the craft and the focus communities, and then trying to throw a dart right at the group that is very much in line with the things that you want to do. So having done this exercise, I hope for those of you who read ahead, can anyone give us examples of both the craft, focus, and or core communities that you are tapped into in your world? I want to see, show a couple hands up there. Okay, I'm going to go to Lisa, and then I'm going to go to Mary. Lisa Alvarez, and then Mary Fox.
There we go. I have tapped into, actually, it's related to the one that Nancy had mentioned, and it's called Wild Idea Lab, and it's for conservation photographers specifically. And it's been a game changer. And I did that not this week. I've been doing it since I was up in Seattle for your when you had the class before COVID, the pre-COVID class. And any rate, so that was one of the ways I made changes after that class. And
Great.
It's been phenomenal. It's
How
just
has,
been a game changer.
let me ask another question, Lisa. How has the process, would you consider yourself an extrovert or introvert? And how has the process of joining communities, showing up, being the person sitting alone at the lunch table saying, hey, I'm over here, I'd like to, show up at the, did you feel like you connected with other people? Did you get value from showing up? Just talk us through a little bit, one level deeper. What was it like?
Yeah. It was I consider myself an introvert, although I'm probably right in the middle because I definitely have extroverted tendencies, but I need that time to recharge by myself.
Ambivert.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I'm an ambivert. Okay. So there was a lot of interaction on in this particular community. They work on the Zoom platform, and they have coffee hours. They have classes like the one Nancy mentioned. I did that class as well, and it continues on. So even though I'm done with the class, we still have question and answer periods every Tuesday where you meet and you show up and talk to people.
One other question: How did it feel? Were you nervous when you showed up at first and you say like you're the newbie?
Yeah, well, I suffer, as I mentioned last week, the imposter syndrome, definitely. But there's a lot of value in talking to people who have the same interests that you do, and also are going through some of the same things that you're going through. Yeah. So some people are at my level, and other people have gone through it and can offer advice.
Just think about that. Thank you, Lisa. Think about that. When you show up at a community, we all are, we may have some anxiety about how we show up, but if you can cast that aside, even for a moment, show up. When you enter a community, there are people who are at your level that you can share experiences with, that you can learn from. There are people who are not as far along as you are. Even if you join today, someone else is going to join tomorrow. So there are people who are further behind where you are in your journey or your role in this community. And of course, there are people who are further along in their journey. And this is part of both your ability to, reach up and ask for a hand, and to help reach down and help others, pull them up. This is structure in a social environment, and around, if you can put again your craft community, your focus community, and or ideally your core community to this, if you can identify those folks, it's just an instant shot in the arm. And I thank you for sharing. I'm gonna go up to Mary real quick here. Hey, Mary, just share something.
Hey, Chase.
Hi there. Share something on your experience of joining.
Well, I've done a lot of action figure photography, and had a chance to meet with a group of people that are into the same thing I am, and was able to actually start a group of my own locally, of folks that go out and we do shoots together and stuff like that.
Yeah. See, this is also what you learn. Thank you, Mary. What you learn from doing that is seeing what other people are doing. And maybe you can't drive 4 hours for every meeting, but maybe you can start something on a smaller scale. Maybe it's digital, and if something online is a possibility. I don't know how you guys have stayed in touch, Mary, but what I just heard from Mary was that she was inspired by what she saw to do something that was her own on a slightly different scale. Again, this is part of being connected to your peers and not necessarily seeing them as competitive. I believe that works itself out. I just want to go over to the other phones here, the text phones. Eric Francis says he once felt alone in the indie filmmaking world in his area, and there were no groups I could find. So he started his own group, and he adds, it did a lot to keep me going. So, if not you, who, and if not now, when? Dennis is giving a shout out. Sue on YouTube, Carmen on Twitter. talking about the community of dog walkers, and more like sorry, it's an amazing comment. I highlighted the part of feeling less like a dog walker and more like being in a wolf pack. Yes. Maria right now is asking how best to follow other people that are in the chat. I would just type in their name and platforms that you spend the most time socializing on. If you are in the Zoom call, and for the folks that are, you know that the comments section, the chat section here is open for you. So I'm not in there mucking it up. I'm drawing my inputs from a different set of platform, but that chat room is for you all to connect if there are people who are doing things and you'd want to share what it is that you're building or a community that you've received value from over time. All right. Thank you for sharing, Lisa and Mary. The best way to level up your own game is to level up your habits, level up the people around you, level up your processes. It's very hard to understand the concept, or I guess we can understand the concept of growth, but it's very hard to experience it without taking action. This idea, if you go back to the execute chapter, this is why I'm such an advocate of taking a step, even if it's an imperfect step. Right now, you may have fear about joining a community, may be excited, but you're doing nothing unless you're actively participating in that community. That's where the real value kicks in. Again, the best way to add value to your own game is leveling up the people, processes around you. You've heard me say you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. I forget who said that first, but it's very true. This is why community and amplification takes up 25% of the book. All right, it's finding your people, topic 1. Topic 2, how to build your audience. Now, if you came here for me to tell you specifically what to do, what steps to do to grow your Instagram following, I'm not going to give you that. So it's the wrong class, it's the wrong level of detail. And importantly, it's not the concept that I want us to focus on, because the mechanics of each of those things are slightly different. And there are all kinds of people and places and ways to think about building your community. But I'm here to give you the macro. And the macro is that the people that have created success for themselves, and notice I didn't say find success, they've created it for themselves. They have built an audience and they have spent time and energy doing it. Now, I call this the other 50% because in part, I want to underscore how much of a commitment it takes, and that it is the other because it is something that is not normally identified as a stepping stone to success and fulfillment. Remember, most people think that the work stands for itself. That's where most people enter this sphere, and they say, if I just do great work, that I will create success for myself. Not true. After some time pursuing that, you realize that, oh, it's actually creating my work and promoting it. So it's not just the work. Everybody has to promote it. Think of the biggest movie stars in the world. They have to go on press tour to promote that. There's a whole marketing machine that kicks off. Everybody has to promote. So it must just be doing good work and then promoting that work. But if you're just doing that work and promoting that work, and you don't have a relationship with a cross-section of humans who are ready to receive your work, for whom you have stood out over time, for whom you have shown up for them, for whom you have inspired or connected with or added value in some way, they won't be there to receive your promotion. I want to really harp on this for a second, because this idea of promoting, if you haven't shown up before, no one knows who you are when you walk on stage to promote the thing that you just built, the play you just wrote, the script that you just wrote. This is a very hard concept for some people. And I will add that this was a learning curve for me. It's one of the reasons I started writing a blog back in 2004, was because I knew that I didn't know that much, but I did know that if I shared what I did, that there were probably other people who were going through the same thing that I was, and we might just be able to connect. Secretly, it was a motivation of mine to learn from them. But notice that the approach that I took was giving value first. Here's what I know. And at first, again, 2 readers, 4 readers. It was my grandma, and then I realized that my grandma had 2 email addresses in my database of like 6 people. But over time, that turned into millions of people. And over time, it wasn't like I did nothing to contribute. I wrote nearly every day for years. There's more than 1,000 blog posts there. And that was the foundation. That foundation of the blog is what launched a lot of the early social success on, as the platforms emerged. And then it was that audience, the social audience, YouTube, all the different platforms, that launched Creative Live, or that launched the Best Camera app. And through creating the Best Camera app, that expanded my footprint, because now there was digital stuff scaling technology. So it wasn't just photography, it was technology, it was digital, all the app makers and the tech forums that I got connected through. And then I used that community to learn an immense amount about further building community, about becoming a better creator. And that community ultimately became, the basis for Creative Live's early success. Now, I admit that there was much of this that I didn't understand early, and that's why I'm trying to commit so much time today and in the book to helping people understand that there is not one creator that you follow that has not followed this pattern at some scale. You understand that you start to participate in these communities at arm's length. Then you maybe take a role in these communities. Maybe then you start your own, you lead your own. This is not about size. This is not about number of followers. This is about an engagement. It's about connection. It's about staying hungry and staying humble. Okay? It's very important distinction between what we think of as social media and what community building actually looks like. All right. Ultimately, in cultivating community, in putting in 50% of our time in building community, the number one place where people fall down ultimately in building community is that they believe that it's just scrolling on Instagram or on whatever your preferred social platform is. We often tell ourselves the teeny lie that this is building community. And I would say that that is procrastination. I would say that that is unnecessary comparison. And the difference is, what is my intent when I open up the app? If my intent is to, go back to Fergus's thing, if I've created something already, because that's how I like to start every day, put something out into the community, don't care if it's a community of 2 or 2 million, put something out in the community, and then I have a time-boxed commitment, and I open the app with the goal of participating, as in leaving comments, learning from, distilling information, trying to add value. A heart, a like, a comment is always best, but that is the participation part that tells me when I showed up with the intention, I intended just to scroll and consume mindlessly, or am I taking an active role in building community? I think the idea of leaving comments is radically underappreciated. And it's not just a comment that's a heart or a high five or an emoji. To show someone that you're actually engaging with the work will do 2 things. One, it will help you understand the work that that person's doing, what went into it, and how it applies to you. And it's a different level of meaning and commitment for the community that you do show up in. And what happens over time is this intention around participating in community actively rather than passively scrolling. If you can approach it with discipline, you can time box it, you can do this after you've already created something and shared it with the community, you can start to look at this as a tool, as a laboratory, as an opportunity of learning and growth. You can balance your commercial aspirations with your personal growth, ambition, and aspirations by how much you interact, on what level. You start to develop a sense of your required promotional skills and the skills of others. And you can realize that if you have a relationship with someone and you show them something that you've built, how much more likely they are to engage with it versus if you do not have a relationship with them. Now, there's a handful of ways that I would encourage you to seek. We talked about the different phases of learning quite a bit in the execute phase, or execute chapter section of the book. We're talking largely about digital community here because we're in a COVID world and getting together in person is tough. But I want to underscore that over time, when it does get safe to be in closer physical proximity to other people, that this is not something to be overlooked. There's also a beautiful thing about a book, right? A book is mentorship at scale. And the way that a book is better than a community is it doesn't talk back, right? You can sit with the ideas in quiet and not feel compelled to keep scrolling. You can go deep on a particular topic. So whether it's a book, whether it's an online digital community, or whether it's a physical community, which I encourage you to start to spend time budgeting both time and money to attend physical gatherings, not just in your neighborhood or in your locality, but maybe you do step out onto a national stage and travel to attend a meditation retreat in a place that you've always wanted to go, or to study with a teacher you've always wanted to study with. I think there's tremendous value there. All right, so that's really topic 2. This is the concept of building your audience, having a long view, doing so with the goal of adding value rather than extracting it. And by being in this for a very long period of time, those are a handful of things that will set you up for success. If you do not understand what I mean, now is a good time to put your hand up and ask a question. Because before we move on to sort of launching and getting your big project out there, you cannot do that successfully without having laid the groundwork for people to receive your work. So I'm going to first look here at my little text aggregator, my comment aggregator. Well, there's a lot of good stuff in here. Moving a little bit too fast though. Let's see. Let's go back to Zoom then, because it's too hard for me to pull something out of the chat. All right, Zoomers.